The federal courthouse in downtown Chicago looked more like a military fortress than a government building that night. Black armored vehicles lined the surrounding streets, while helicopters circled above the skyline through heavy winter clouds. Armed officers guarded every entrance. Television crews crowded the sidewalks outside beneath freezing rain, while reporters competed aggressively for updates surrounding the largest corruption hearing the city had witnessed in decades. Inside the courthouse, fear traveled quietly through every hallway, because Luca Moretti had finally appeared in public. Even among Chicago's most powerful people, his name carried a strange kind of terror. Politicians avoided speaking it too loudly. Wealthy businessmen lowered their voices whenever discussing him privately. Criminal organizations feared him openly while pretending loyalty publicly. Some called him the king of Chicago's underworld. Others called him a monster created by the city itself. But nobody called him weak. Sophia Bennett arrived at the courthouse exhausted after working nearly 30 consecutive hours between public defense cases and overnight legal research assignments. Dark circles rested beneath her eyes, while unpaid bills filled her apartment kitchen back home. Her younger brother, Ethan, required expensive medical care and specialized support programs she could barely afford despite sacrificing nearly every part of her personal life to protect him. Still, she refused to quit. Because Ethan depended entirely on her after their father disappeared years earlier, and their mother died from illness shortly afterward. Sophia learned very young that survival demanded endurance, even inside places designed to humiliate people like her. The courthouse reflected that reality perfectly. Elite attorneys from wealthy law firms moved confidently through marble corridors, wearing custom suits worth more than Sophia's monthly rent. Federal prosecutors whispered among themselves beside armed agents, while influential political donors occupied restricted seating sections near the front of the courtroom. Sophia noticed the looks immediately: the quiet judgment, the hidden class hatred. To Chicago's elite legal circles, Sophia Bennett was simply another overworked public defender from the wrong side of the city, pretending she belonged among powerful people. Her cheap shoes, her old coat, her exhaustion, everything about her exposed financial struggle the wealthy spent their lives avoiding. And yet, despite their status, none of those powerful people looked comfortable that night. Because Luca Moretti sat only 20 feet away from them, the courtroom itself felt suffocating once the hearing began. Armed security officers lined every wall, while federal investigators organized stacks of evidence connected to trafficking operations, political bribery, money laundering, and multiple organized crime murders allegedly tied to the Moretti empire. Media networks broadcast everything live nationwide. The government wanted Luca publicly destroyed. Sophia sensed that immediately, not because the evidence looked convincing, because it looked too perfect. Every witness statement aligned too cleanly. Every timeline matched with suspicious precision. Digital records appeared recently recovered despite investigations supposedly spanning years. Someone built the case carefully. That realization emotionally unsettled her. Sophia first noticed Luca during the second hour of testimony, after a federal prosecutor accused him of ordering multiple witness executions tied to trafficking investigations. The room feared him instantly. Even sitting silently behind reinforced barriers, Luca Moretti controlled the emotional atmosphere around him completely. Tall, sharply dressed, and emotionally unreadable, he carried himself less like a criminal defendant and more like a man observing enemies already preparing for war. People avoided eye contact with him instinctively, except Sophia. And that was her first mistake, because the moment she looked directly at Luca Moretti, she realized something felt wrong. Not innocence, not kindness, something far more dangerous. Pain. The expression disappeared quickly beneath his cold exterior. But Sophia saw it clearly for a brief second when prosecutors mentioned missing trafficking victims connected to the case. Luca looked furious, not defensive. That distinction emotionally disturbed her more than she wanted to admit. The hearing worsened throughout the evening, as additional witnesses testified against him publicly. Politicians inside the courtroom subtly celebrated each accusation, while television analysts outside declared the Moretti empire finished. Then everything changed. Sophia received access accidentally to sealed evidence files while assisting another defense attorney during a procedural dispute involving witness classifications. Hidden inside the documents were altered timelines, manipulated financial transfers, and missing testimony records connected to victims who disappeared after cooperating with federal investigators. Someone buried critical evidence intentionally, and innocent people died because of it. Sophia's hands shook while reading the files, because the corruption reached far beyond organized crime. Federal officials manipulated the investigation itself. The realization terrified her. She understood immediately why certain witnesses vanished before testifying publicly, why evidence appeared selectively edited, why powerful political figures pushed so aggressively for a televised conviction instead of legitimate investigation. Luca Moretti was dangerous, but he was also being used. The courtroom atmosphere shifted dramatically once Sophia interrupted the hearing publicly. Federal attorneys attempted dismissing inconsistencies in the evidence until she formally challenged the validity of witness classifications and manipulated timelines before the judge. The silence afterward felt catastrophic. Nobody expected someone like Sophia Bennett to defend Luca Moretti publicly, especially not during a nationally televised hearing. Reporters stopped typing. Federal agents exchanged nervous looks. Several politicians inside the gallery appeared genuinely panicked, and Luca finally looked directly at her. Sophia immediately regretted speaking, not because she believed she was wrong, because every survival instinct inside her recognized the danger instantly. She had just humiliated extremely powerful people publicly. The tension inside the courtroom became psychologically unbearable after that moment. Prosecutors aggressively attempted discrediting Sophia's objections, while media analysts accused her of corruption almost immediately. But none of it mattered emotionally compared to Luca's reaction. He never interrupted, never smiled, never spoke. He simply watched her with an expression Sophia could not understand, not amusement, not manipulation, something closer to emotional disbelief, as if hearing someone defend him without fear physically disturbed him somehow. That look followed her long after the hearing ended. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded Sophia aggressively beneath flashing cameras and police barricades. Questions came rapidly regarding her connection to Luca Moretti, possible corruption inside the defense process, and allegations involving organized crime influence. Then the first attack happened. A black vehicle accelerated suddenly through the crowded street, directly toward her position outside the courthouse steps. Everything afterward blurred together violently. Screaming, gunfire, federal agents diving for cover. The vehicle crashed into security barriers moments before reaching Sophia after armed men intercepted it from nearby intersections with brutal efficiency. The attackers died instantly. Sophia stood frozen in shock while chaos consumed the entire courthouse entrance. And through the confusion, she saw Luca Moretti being escorted toward armored transport vehicles surrounded by tactical officers. Still watching her, the emotional intensity in his expression unsettled her deeply, because he looked less like a criminal protecting himself and more like a man emotionally shaken by something he never expected to experience again. Kindness. Sophia barely slept after returning home that night. News channels replayed footage of the assassination attempt repeatedly, while commentators questioned whether she secretly worked for organized crime networks. Social media exploded with accusations against her career and integrity. The attacks intensified quickly afterward. Anonymous threats appeared outside her apartment building. Strange vehicles waited near Ethan's therapy center during afternoons. Her office received complaints demanding termination from public defense services. Someone wanted her terrified enough to stay silent. Instead, Sophia investigated further. She spent the next 2 days reviewing hidden records connected to corruption hearing privately. The deeper she searched, the more horrifying the truth became. The trafficking operations tied to the case involved politicians, federal officials, corporate investors, and criminal organizations operating together for years. Luca Moretti was connected, but he was not controlling everything. He was part of something far larger, and someone inside the government needed him blamed publicly before deeper secrets surfaced. That realization emotionally changed everything, especially after Sophia discovered hidden employment files connected to her late father. At first, she thought the documents were fake. The names, the signatures, the payment records, none of it made sense. Her father once worked directly for the Moretti organization years before disappearing permanently, not as a criminal, as legal counsel tied to financial investigations involving political corruption. Sophia felt physically sick reading the files alone inside her apartment after midnight, because her father spent years secretly connected to the very empire now destroying her life. Then she noticed one final document buried beneath the archives, a classified incident report connected to her father's disappearance, signed personally by Luca Moretti himself. The silence inside Luca Moretti's penthouse felt unnatural from the moment Sophia Bennett entered the private elevator beneath the underground parking garage. Chicago's skyline stretched endlessly beyond the glass walls above, glowing beneath cold rain and distant sirens, but none of the beauty softened the suffocating atmosphere surrounding the building. Armed guards stood outside nearly every hallway entrance. Security cameras rotated silently across ceilings lined with black marble and gold trim. Even the expensive artwork decorating the penthouse walls seemed chosen less for luxury and more for intimidation. Sophia immediately understood the truth nobody dared say aloud. The penthouse was not a home. It was a fortress designed for paranoia. Only 48 hours had passed since the televised corruption hearing, yet her entire life already felt destroyed beyond recognition. Reporters camped outside her apartment building day and night. Anonymous threats flooded her phone. 2 witnesses connected to the case had disappeared overnight. Another journalist investigating the corruption network had been found dead inside his car near the Chicago River. Every terrifying event seemed connected to one man, Luca Moretti. Sophia originally believed his organization was responsible for the attacks surrounding her. But the deeper she looked into the evidence, the more she realized something far larger existed beneath Chicago's political system. Judges, senators, prosecutors, businessmen, and federal officials all appear connected to hidden financial transfers buried inside legal charities and shell corporations. The corruption spread so deeply into the city that separating criminals from government officials became almost impossible. That realization terrified her more than Luca himself. The penthouse staff avoided direct eye contact whenever Sophia passed through the hallways. Their movements carried the nervous precision of people who understood mistakes could become fatal. Even the housekeepers whispered softly when speaking to one another, constantly glancing toward surveillance cameras hidden behind decorative glass panels. The entire building operated through fear. Sophia quickly noticed one disturbing pattern. Nobody feared physical punishment nearly as much as disappointing Luca emotionally. That truth unsettled her deeply. Luca himself remained emotionally distant during the first days inside the penthouse. He spoke little, controlled every movement carefully, and carried the cold discipline of someone who trusted nobody around him. Most nights he disappeared into private meetings with politicians and wealthy businessmen who entered through hidden elevators long after midnight. Sophia secretly watched several of those meetings from upstairs security monitors she accidentally discovered while wandering through a restricted hallway. Men publicly celebrated as respected leaders entered Luca's penthouse carrying briefcases filled with legal contracts, untraceable cash, and confidential government files. The corruption network was real, and Luca Moretti sat directly in the center of it. Yet something about him still felt different from the others. The politicians laughed while discussing destroyed lives. Wealthy investors casually spoke about trafficking investigations disappearing after payments reached the right officials. Powerful attorneys joked about manipulating juries based on race, social class, and financial influence. But Luca never laughed. He watched silently from the shadows while others celebrated cruelty openly. Sometimes his expression hardened with visible disgust during those conversations, though nobody around him seemed brave enough to acknowledge it. Sophia slowly began understanding that fear controlled the empire far more than loyalty ever had. Her isolation inside the penthouse intensified emotionally with each passing day. She missed her younger brother desperately. Federal investigators repeatedly blocked her requests to contact him directly, claiming security concerns prevented communication. The uncertainty exhausted her mentally until sleep became nearly impossible. Only one person inside the penthouse seemed openly hostile toward her from the beginning, Vanessa DeMarco. Vanessa represented everything Sophia hated about Chicago's wealthy elite. Elegant, manipulative, and emotionally venomous, Vanessa carried herself like a queen moving through servants rather than equals. She constantly mocked Sophia's lower-class background indirectly during social gatherings hosted inside the penthouse. The insults became increasingly cruel whenever wealthy guests visited. Vanessa criticized Sophia's clothing, education, family background, and even her speech patterns in front of politicians and businessmen who already viewed Sophia as inferior. Hidden racism and class hatred spread naturally through those gatherings. Wealthy social elites openly treated Sophia like an outsider contaminating their environment. Sophia noticed something even darker beneath their behavior. Many of them genuinely believed poor people deserved suffering. That realization emotionally disturbed her more than the criminal violence surrounding Luca's empire. One evening, Vanessa deliberately arranged a private dinner gathering where several elite political donors publicly discussed criminal neighborhoods across Chicago like disposable zones filled with undesirable people. Their language carried subtle racism hidden beneath polished political vocabulary. They blamed entire communities for corruption, while secretly funding the same criminal systems destroying those neighborhoods. Sophia nearly exposed her anger publicly until Luca unexpectedly interrupted the conversation. Without raising his voice, he ended the dinner immediately. The room fell silent instantly. Even Vanessa looked shaken. Sophia realized then that Luca's control over people came less from violence and more from psychological dominance. Nobody challenged him because they genuinely feared his emotional reactions. Later that night, Sophia wandered deeper into the penthouse while unable to sleep. Rain hammered against the windows overlooking Chicago. Most security staff remained stationed downstairs after a suspicious vehicle had appeared near the building earlier that evening. That temporary distraction allowed Sophia to enter a restricted hallway she had never seen before. The atmosphere changed immediately. Unlike the cold luxury decorating the rest of the penthouse, this section felt abandoned emotionally. Dust covered expensive shelves. Framed photographs lined the walls beside old family portraits damaged by age and neglect. The silence inside the hallway carried something heavier than fear, grief. Sophia slowly entered the final room at the end of the corridor. Everything inside remained perfectly preserved. Books rested untouched on dark wooden shelves. A half-finished chess game still sat beside a leather chair near the fireplace. Family photographs covered nearly every surface inside the room. Several showed a younger Luca standing beside another man who appeared nearly identical to him, except for softer features and a warmer smile. His younger brother, the murdered brother whispered about constantly throughout Chicago. Sophia immediately noticed a difference in Luca's expression inside those photographs. Years earlier, he had looked almost human, not cold, not emotionally empty, just exhausted. The room itself felt frozen in time, like Luca refused to allow the memory of his brother to disappear completely. Sophia quietly examined several documents scattered across an old desk before noticing something strange hidden beneath stacked financial files. Her father's name. Shock froze her instantly. Several meeting records listed her father attending private legal conferences connected to Luca's brother nearly 15 years earlier. Additional documents showed hidden investigations involving trafficking operations tied directly to wealthy political donors. Her father had known them. Sophia's hands trembled while searching deeper through the files. Newspaper clippings, witness reports, financial transfers, and sealed legal statements filled the drawers. Many victims connected to the trafficking network came from poor immigrant communities, ignored completely by law enforcement. Nobody had protected them because powerful people profited from their disappearance. Sophia suddenly understood why innocent witnesses kept dying. The corruption network protected itself through fear. A quiet sound behind her caused immediate panic. Luca stood silently in the doorway. For several seconds, neither of them moved. Sophia expected rage, violence, threats. Instead, she saw exhaustion in his eyes. He slowly entered the memorial room, before stopping beside one of the framed photographs, showing his brother smiling beside several legal investigators. One of them was Sophia's father. The realization emotionally shattered her. Her father had not disappeared randomly years earlier. He had been connected directly to Luca's family before vanishing completely. Luca stared silently at the photograph for several moments. For the first time since entering the penthouse, Sophia saw genuine emotion break through his controlled exterior. Pain, not theatrical grief. not anger, real pain. Sophia suddenly realized Luca only seemed emotionally calm inside this room because it was the last place connected to the version of himself that existed before tragedy destroyed his family. That understanding changed something inside her. Fear still remained, but sympathy quietly began replacing hatred. The emotional tension between them deepened silently after that night. Luca slowly began trusting Sophia with limited information connected to corruption investigations spreading across Chicago. He allowed her access to hidden financial archives, proving judges and politicians received illegal payments tied to trafficking networks. The evidence horrified her. Entire legal systems existed only to protect wealthy predators. Meanwhile, paranoia spread rapidly through the penthouse. Security teams doubled overnight after rumors surfaced about rival mafia families targeting Sophia directly. Several guards disappeared mysteriously within days. Surveillance systems constantly malfunctioned despite expensive upgrades. Luca's organization itself seemed infected with betrayal. Nobody trusted anyone anymore. Sophia emotionally struggled beneath the pressure surrounding her constantly. Every hallway felt watched. Every conversation carried hidden meaning. Every act of kindness seemed dangerous. Yet Luca's protective behavior toward her continued growing stronger. One evening, Sophia accidentally cut her hand while searching through old files inside the archives. Before medical staff could arrive, Luca himself quietly wrapped the injury with surprising gentleness. The moment unsettled her emotionally because it revealed something deeply human beneath his brutal reputation. A man capable of tenderness still existed inside him somewhere. That realization terrified her almost as much as the violence surrounding his empire. Later that night, Sophia secretly returned to Memorial Room while the penthouse slept. Rain continued falling beyond the skyline, while distant thunder echoed across the city. This time she searched deeper through hidden drawers beneath the old desk. What she found nearly stopped her breathing. A sealed investigative report connected directly to her father described secret meetings between Luca's brother and multiple legal whistleblowers shortly before his murder. One photograph attached to the report showed her father entering the Moretti estate only 3 days before Luca's brother disappeared forever. Sophia suddenly understood the horrifying truth. Her father had not simply known Luca's family. He had been part of whatever destroyed them. And someone powerful enough to erase entire families had spent years hiding it from everyone. The realization sent cold fear through her entire body as footsteps quietly approached the memorial room from a hallway outside. Sophia Bennett spent the next several days trapped between two terrifying truths. The first was that Luca Moretti ruled one of the most feared criminal organizations in Chicago. The second was far worse. The people publicly claiming to protect the city were just as corrupt as the criminals hiding beneath it. That realization slowly poisoned everything she once believed about justice. Rain covered Chicago almost nonstop during the following week. Gray clouds hung above the skyline, while political scandals flooded national news broadcasts. Federal investigations quietly expanded throughout the city after multiple judges suddenly resigned without explanation. Wealthy businessmen vanished from public appearances overnight. Rumors spread through legal circles that secret indictments were being prepared against several influential political families. Inside Luca's penthouse, paranoia spread faster than fear. Armed guards rotated constantly throughout the building. Surveillance systems operated 24 hours a day. Security teams searched vehicles entering underground garages, while private investigators monitored rival mafia organizations, preparing for open conflict. Nobody trusted anyone anymore. Sophia noticed emotional pressure changing Luca slowly. He slept less each night. Dark circles formed beneath his eyes. His temper became more dangerous whenever politicians appeared inside the penthouse pretending innocence, while secretly protecting the same corruption, destroying innocent lives across Chicago. Yet despite the chaos surrounding him, Luca continued protecting Sophia obsessively. The realization unsettled her deeply. One evening, Sophia entered the private archives again, while heavy thunder echoed outside the penthouse windows. She spent hours searching through financial records connected to hidden shell corporations operating beneath charitable foundations and legal organizations. The deeper she investigated, the darker the truth became. Trafficking operations stretched across multiple states. Judges received illegal payments through fake consulting firms. Politicians manipulated criminal investigations to protect wealthy donors. Missing women disappeared through transportation companies owned secretly by billionaire investors tied directly to political dynasties. Entire systems existed purely to protect powerful families. Sophia's stomach twisted while reviewing case files connected to victims ignored completely by law enforcement. Most came from poor immigrant neighborhoods abandoned by politicians during election seasons. Their disappearances barely reached local news stations before being forgotten entirely. The corruption thrived because society decided certain people were disposable. That truth emotionally destroyed her. She suddenly understood why her father had disappeared years earlier after investigating political corruption connected to organized crime. He had not uncovered isolated criminal activity. He had discovered an empire. While Sophia continued examining documents, another file caught her attention unexpectedly. Damian Cross, federal investigator. The name appeared repeatedly throughout confidential reports connected to anti-corruption operations. Publicly, Damian Cross represented one of the country's most respected federal investigators. Media networks praise him constantly for exposing organized crime across multiple cities. But hidden financial transfers told a different story. Sophia discovered encrypted records proving Damian secretly received payments from both federal intelligence accounts and shell corporations tied directly to rival mafia organizations. He manipulated both sides. The realization horrified her. Damian Cross was not investigating corruption to destroy it. He was controlling it. Sophia immediately understood why federal raids always targeted weaker organizations while protected political figures escaped punishment repeatedly. Damian carefully maintained balance between criminals and government officials to preserve the system benefiting everyone powerful enough to profit from it. The corruption network extended far beyond Chicago. It infected the entire country. A quiet sound behind her caused immediate panic. Lucas stood near the archive entrance, watching silently. Sophia expected anger after discovering confidential records again. Instead, Lucas slowly approached the desk beside her before placing another sealed folder in front of her. Inside were photographs. Sophia froze emotionally while examining them. The images showed Lucas' younger brother Anthony Moretti meeting secretly with legal investigators, journalists, and whistleblowers years earlier. Several photographs included Sophia's father among them. Anthony Moretti had been trying to expose a corruption network before his disappearance, and Sophia's father helped him. Luca remained silent while she continued reviewing the evidence. His expression hardened visibly whenever Anthony's name appeared inside the reports. Sophia finally understood the emotional wound controlling him for years. Anthony had not simply disappeared. He had been erased. The people responsible destroyed every witness connected to the investigation afterward, including Sophia's father. Luca quietly explained portions of the truth without revealing everything directly. Anthony discovered evidence proving senators, judges, billionaire investors, and organized crime leaders operated together through trafficking systems protected by political influence. Before the information could become public, Anthony vanished completely. 3 weeks later, investigators found his body inside an abandoned warehouse near the Chicago docks. The case was officially blamed on gang violence. Luca never believed it. Sophia noticed genuine pain breaking through his emotional control whenever he discussed his brother. The brutal reputation surrounding Luca suddenly felt less like cruelty and more like survival. Violence transformed him into someone feared enough to stay alive inside a system designed to eliminate threats permanently. For the first time since entering the penthouse, Sophia truly pitted him. That terrified her almost as much as the empire itself. Meanwhile, Vanessa DeMarco intensified her manipulation publicly. Several wealthy social elites connected to political organizations began spreading rumors accusing Sophia of becoming Luca's mistress to gain influence inside the criminal empire. News networks subtly questioned her professional ethics during televised discussions about corruption investigations. Wealthy attorneys openly mocked her lower-class background during legal conferences. Hidden racism and class hatred spread constantly beneath polite public language. Sophia realized elite society viewed people like her as temporary tools rather than equals. Vanessa encouraged that humiliation deliberately. One evening, she hosted a private political gathering inside the penthouse, where several wealthy investors openly discussed poor neighborhoods like economic burdens infecting the city. Their language carried subtle racism hidden beneath financial terminology and urban policy discussions. Sophia watched in disgust while powerful people treated entire communities as disposable populations useful only for labor, prison systems, or political manipulation. Luca remained silent throughout most of the conversation, until one senator casually joked about trafficking victims being collateral damage necessary for protecting economic stability. The atmosphere changed instantly. Luca's emotional control nearly shattered. Without warning, he slammed a glass against the marble fireplace hard enough to silence the entire room. Fear spread immediately across every face inside the gathering. Nobody dared move. Sophia realized then that beneath Luca's cold discipline lived uncontrollable rage connected directly to corruption, destroying innocent lives for decades. And somehow she had become the only person capable of calming him emotionally. That realization frightened her deeply. Later that night, Luca quietly apologized for exposing her to the political gathering. The moment felt strangely intimate despite the silence between them. No romance existed openly, yet emotional trust slowly formed through shared trauma and understanding. Sophia began seeing the man hidden beneath the monster everyone feared. Unfortunately, rival organizations noticed it too. Reports soon reached the penthouse that multiple mafia families planned coordinated attacks against Luca's operations. Several trusted security members disappeared unexpectedly. Financial accounts tied to the Moretti empire suddenly froze under federal investigation, orders approved secretly by Damian Cross. The empire itself started collapsing internally. Psychological fear spread through every level of the organization. Sophia witnessed violent punishment firsthand days later after Luca uncovered betrayal inside a security division. One longtime lieutenant secretly sold information to rival groups connected to Damian Cross. The punishment happened privately inside the underground garage beneath the penthouse. Sophia accidentally saw enough to understand the horrifying truth. Luca destroyed traitors without hesitation. The violence emotionally shattered her because it forced her to confront reality clearly. No matter how sympathetic his trauma became, Luca still ruled through fear and brutality. That contradiction tormented her constantly. She feared him, but she also feared the world that created him even more. As surveillance and paranoia intensified throughout the penthouse, Sophia secretly continued investigating her father's disappearance. Hidden documents eventually revealed shocking details buried for years beneath sealed legal records. Her father attempted delivering evidence against several political dynasties shortly before vanishing. The final investigation connected directly to Anthony Moretti's murder. Sophia emotionally collapsed after realizing her father died trying to stop the same corruption now consuming her life. Entire families have been destroyed simply to protect billionaire dynasties and political reputations. The realization changed everything inside her permanently. One stormy night, while searching through hidden archive terminals beneath the penthouse, Sophia uncovered another encrypted file accidentally left unsecured after one of Luca's emergency meetings. Audio recording, date stamped 15 years earlier. Hands trembling, Sophia activated playback quietly. Static filled the room before distorted voices emerged. One voice belonged to a senior Moretti lieutenant she recognized immediately from current operations inside the penthouse. Another belonged to an unknown political official. The conversation discussed eliminating witnesses connected to Anthony Moretti's investigation. Names appeared rapidly throughout the recording. Then Sophia heard her father's name. The room seemed to stop breathing around her. The voice calmly ordered her father's murder to protect political alliances connected to the Moretti empire. Sophia froze completely while horror consumed every thought inside her mind. Someone inside Luca Moretti's organization had ordered her father executed years earlier, and the recording proved it. The recording destroyed whatever fragile sense of safety Sophia Bennett still possessed inside Luca Moretti's empire. For 2 straight days, she barely spoke to anyone inside the penthouse. The revelation about her father's murder poisoned every thought running through her mind. Every hallway inside the building suddenly felt colder. Every security guard watching her seemed dangerous. Every whisper between Luca's men sounded like another hidden betrayal waiting beneath the surface. Most terrifying of all, she no longer knew whether Luca himself had known the truth. Chicago descended deeper into chaos during the following week. Federal investigations spread rapidly across multiple criminal organizations after leaked financial records exposed political bribery involving judges, senators, and billionaire investors. News networks broadcast nonstop coverage about corruption infecting city leadership, while wealthy elites quietly fled public appearances. But beneath the political panic, another war was beginning. The underworld had realized something dangerous. Luca Moretti was emotionally attached to Sophia Bennett, and that made her the most vulnerable target in Chicago. The first assassination threat arrived publicly. Sophia had accompanied Luca's legal advisors to a downtown courthouse under heavy security protection when a black vehicle suddenly accelerated toward the entrance plaza. Armed guards reacted instantly while civilians screamed and scattered across the crowded sidewalk. The vehicle exploded seconds later. Flames erupted across the street, while smoke consumed the courthouse entrance. Sophia froze in shock as security teams surrounded her immediately. No casualties occurred, but the message became painfully clear. The attack was never meant to kill her. It was meant to terrify her. By evening, every criminal organization across Chicago understood rival families, had officially declared Sophia Bennett a target connected directly to Luca Moretti's weakness. Inside the penthouse, the emotional atmosphere shifted violently. Security protocols doubled overnight. Armed guards patrolled every floor constantly. Surveillance teams monitored elevators, underground garages, and nearby rooftops 24 hours a day. Nobody entered the building without multiple identity checks. Fear spread through the organization faster than loyalty. Sophia noticed staff members avoiding eye contact whenever she entered rooms. Some pitied her. Others blamed her quietly for destabilizing the empire emotionally. Rumors spread throughout criminal networks claiming Luca had become distracted, irrational, and emotionally compromised because of her. The rumors only intensified after Luca publicly attacked one of his own captains during a private meeting. The captain suggested relocating Sophia outside Chicago permanently to reduce political pressure surrounding the organization. Luca nearly killed him. The violence shocked everyone present. Sophia heard about the incident afterward through frightened security staff whispering inside the hallway outside her room. Nobody had ever seen Luca lose emotional control so openly before. The realization unsettled her deeply. The most feared man in Chicago was risking his empire for her, and that terrified the underworld more than his violence ever had. Vanessa DeMarco immediately weaponized the situation. Within days, elite social circles throughout Chicago began circulating vicious rumors, portraying Sophia as an opportunistic outsider manipulating Luca emotionally for power and protection. Wealthy women mocked her background publicly during charity events and political gatherings. Television commentators questioned her credibility as an attorney, while subtly implying she exchanged intimacy for influence inside the Moretti empire. Hidden racism and class hatred poisoned every discussion involving her name. Sophia watched elite society destroy women like her effortlessly while protecting powerful men responsible for actual crimes. That emotional humiliation slowly broke something inside her. One evening, she attended a political fundraising gala under Luca's protection after pressure from several influential allies demanding public unity against ongoing federal investigations. The luxury hotel ballroom overflowed with politicians, billionaires, celebrity investors, and criminal intermediaries pretending sophistication beneath expensive suits and polished smiles. Sophia immediately felt unwelcome. Women from wealthy families stared at her with carefully disguised disgust. Older politicians dismissed her presence entirely. Several elite donors openly questioned why someone from her background belonged inside rooms reserved for important families. Their language remained polite. Their hatred did not. Vanessa intensified the humiliation personally by introducing Sophia mockingly to powerful socialites as Luca's latest emotional weakness. The insult spread rapidly across the ballroom. Sophia felt humiliation burning through her chest, while wealthy guests quietly laughed behind champagne glasses and political smiles. Years of struggling financially while surviving inside systems controlled by rich families suddenly crashed emotionally against the cruel reality surrounding her. No matter how intelligent or capable she became, elite society would always view her as disposable. Luca noticed everything. The atmosphere inside the ballroom changed the moment he approached. Silence spread immediately among nearby guests, while fear replaced amusement across several faces. Luca's presence carried something heavier than authority. It carried danger powerful enough to silence billionaires. Without speaking publicly, he positioned himself beside Sophia protectively and refused to leave her side for the remainder of the evening. The gesture emotionally shook her more than any violent act ever could, because beneath his terrifying reputation, Luca Moretti was trying to protect her dignity. That realization became impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, federal pressure surrounding criminal organizations intensified daily. Damian Cross appeared repeatedly across national media, discussing anti-corruption operations expanding throughout Chicago. Publicly, he positioned himself as a heroic investigator fighting organized crime and political corruption simultaneously. Privately, he manipulated both sides carefully. Sophia understood that now. She watched Luca grow increasingly suspicious whenever Damian's investigations targeted rival families, while quietly avoiding politically connected billionaires tied to trafficking operations. Someone was orchestrating the war strategically, and hidden betrayal continued spreading inside the Moretti organization itself. Several shipments disappeared mysteriously from warehouse operations controlled by Luca's trusted captains. Confidential meeting details leaked repeatedly to federal investigators. Rival groups somehow anticipated security movements before they occurred. Paranoia infected everyone. No one trusted anyone anymore. Sophia witnessed the emotional toll affecting Luca slowly each night. He slept less, ate less, spent hours alone inside the memorial room dedicated to his murdered brother. Sometimes she passed the doorway quietly and saw him staring at old photographs like a man trapped inside grief too painful to escape. Those moments changed her perception of him completely. The monster the media described rarely appeared when nobody else was watching. Instead, she saw exhaustion, trauma, loneliness, and beneath all of it, unbearable guilt. Their emotional connection deepened silently after that. No dramatic confessions existed between them. No reckless romance. Trust formed instead through sacrifice and unspoken understanding. Luca began sharing confidential information with her privately during late-night strategy meetings. Sophia helped review legal documents tied to shell corporations while identifying political vulnerabilities threatening the organization. They became emotionally dependent on each other without fully realizing it. That dependence frightened Luca's enemies. Weeks later, rival mafia leaders demanded an emergency summit meeting inside a heavily guarded private casino outside Chicago. The purpose officially involved maintaining peace during expanding federal investigations. Unofficially, they intended to pressure Luca publicly. Sophia accompanied him despite serious security concerns. The summit atmosphere felt poisonous from the moment they arrived. Every criminal leader inside the casino watched Sophia constantly. Some viewed her with curiosity, others with resentment. Most simply viewed her as the reason Luca Moretti had become emotionally unstable enough to threaten the balance protecting organized crime operations across the city. Several rival bosses openly criticized Luca during negotiations. They accused him of allowing emotion to compromise business operations. Federal investigations expanded because of unnecessary attention surrounding Sophia. Political allies grew nervous. Investors began withdrawing money. One older mafia leader finally voiced what everyone feared. Luca Moretti was becoming dangerous because he finally cared about someone. The room fell silent afterward. Sophia noticed something terrifying then. None of those men feared Luca's violence anymore. They feared his humanity. Because if someone capable of monstrous brutality suddenly discovered love or emotional attachment, he might stop obeying the system protecting powerful criminals for decades. And that threatened everyone. Luca ended the meeting violently. The confrontation nearly erupted into open bloodshed before security teams intervened. Sophia watched rival leaders retreat cautiously afterward, while armed guards escorted them from the casino under extreme tension. War was no longer approaching. It had already begun. Back inside the penthouse, psychological warfare intensified rapidly. Threatening letters appeared beneath Sophia's bedroom door. Anonymous phone calls targeted her younger brother repeatedly. News organizations leaked private details about her childhood and financial struggles publicly online. Someone wanted her emotionally destroyed before killing her physically. The pressure finally broke her completely one storm-filled night. Sophia collapsed emotionally inside the penthouse library after discovering photographs showing armed men following her younger brother outside his therapy center earlier that morning. Fear consumed her instantly. Every attempt to protect her family had failed. Luca found her there hours later. For the first time since entering his empire, Sophia allowed herself to cry openly in front of him, not because she trusted him completely, because she was too exhausted to hide fear anymore. Luca remained beside her silently while thunder shook the city outside massive penthouse windows. He never offered false reassurance, never promised safety he could not guarantee. Instead, he quietly admitted the truth. The moment the underworld realized he would burn cities to keep her alive, Sophia Bennett became more valuable dead than any politician in Chicago. The honesty emotionally devastated her. But strangely, it also deepened the trust growing between them, because Luca Moretti never lied about danger. Hours later, Sophia finally returned to her bedroom, emotionally drained, while violent rainstorms consumed the skyline outside. Lightning illuminated the dark city repeatedly beyond towering glass windows. For the first time in weeks, exhaustion pulled her briefly towards sleep. Then the window exploded. A sniper bullet crashed through the bedroom glass during the midnight thunderstorm, missing Sophia's head by inches before burying itself deep inside the wall behind her. The sniper attack changed everything inside Luca Moretti's empire. By morning, the penthouse no longer felt like a fortress. It felt like a battlefield waiting for the first gunshot. Armed guards filled every hallway while surveillance teams monitored nearby rooftops and underground garages nonstop. Nobody trusted anyone completely anymore. Fear spread through the organization faster than orders. Sophia Bennett barely slept after the attack. Every loud sound forced panic through her chest. Every shadow moving across the penthouse windows made her instinctively step backward. She understood now that the underworld was no longer threatening her quietly. They intended to erase her publicly. Luca reacted to the assassination attempt with terrifying precision. Within hours, 3 rival associates connected to a competing mafia family disappeared from Chicago entirely. Rumors spread through criminal networks, claiming Luca personally interrogated one of the men before his body appeared beneath an abandoned bridge outside the city. No one confirmed the story. No one doubted it either. But beneath the violence and retaliation, something far more dangerous was happening to Luca emotionally. Sophia noticed it first during the days following the sniper attack. His carefully controlled personality had begun cracking beneath pressure. The calm discipline that once made him untouchable now disappeared unpredictably whenever her safety became involved. He stopped delegating security decisions, stopped trusting advisors, stopped sleeping entirely. The most feared mafia boss in Chicago had become emotionally unstable, and powerful people across the city immediately sensed weakness. That weakness became visible publicly during the largest political charity gala Chicago had hosted in years. The event took place inside the Blackwood Imperial Hotel, a towering luxury skyscraper overlooking downtown Chicago. Billionaires, politicians, federal officials, celebrities, and criminal intermediaries filled the massive ballroom beneath glittering chandeliers, while cameras broadcast the gathering nationwide. Officially, the gala raised money for legal reform and public housing initiatives. Unofficially, it served as a private battlefield between corrupt political families and criminal organizations fighting for survival beneath expanding federal investigations. Sophia never wanted to attend, but Luca insisted. Too many rumors surrounded them already. Too many rival organizations viewed Sophia as evidence Luca Moretti had become emotionally compromised. Public appearances now mattered strategically. Sophia understood the real reason immediately. Luca wanted the underworld to see she was still alive. The ballroom atmosphere felt poison from the moment they arrived. Sophia noticed hidden tension beneath every polite smile and expensive handshake. Armed security guards disguised as hotel staff moved constantly throughout the room. Politicians whispered nervously beside criminal financiers, pretending sophistication behind champagne glasses. Everyone anticipated violence eventually. No one knew when it would begin. Vanessa DeMarco moved elegantly through the ballroom like a predator hiding beneath luxury jewelry and practiced smiles. She quietly manipulated rival leaders throughout the evening, planting paranoia carefully inside every conversation involving Luca and Sofia. Some guests believed Sofia had become Luca's weakness. Others believed she had become his weapon. Vanessa ensured both rumors spread equally. Meanwhile, Damian Cross operated from the opposite side of the ballroom, surrounded by federal officials and media executives. Publicly, he represented justice and anti-corruption reform. Privately, he manipulated political chaos, like a man orchestrating war from inside the shadows. Sofia watched him carefully throughout the evening. The more she learned about Damian, the more dangerous he appeared. He no longer resembled a federal investigator seeking justice. He resembled someone positioning himself to inherit power after the criminal empire collapsed. That realization terrified her, because men like Damian Cross did not care who survived. As the gala progressed, live interviews began broadcasting across major news networks covering corruption scandals spreading through Chicago's political system. Wealthy donors and influential officials gave carefully rehearsed speeches defending reform efforts while hiding their involvement behind polished public images. Then reporters unexpectedly approached Sofia. The attention startled everyone nearby instantly. Questions came aggressively. Why was she attending the gala beside Luca Moretti? Did she support criminal organizations? Was she romantically involved with the most feared mafia boss in Chicago? Did she believe Luca Moretti deserved prison? The ballroom quieted slowly while cameras focused entirely on her. Sofia saw panic flash across Luca's face for the first time since meeting him. Not fear for himself, fear for her, because every public statement now carried deadly consequences. Sofia should have remained silent. Instead, she spoke honestly. She admitted corruption existed everywhere in Chicago, inside politics, courts, corporations, and criminal organizations alike. She acknowledged Luca Moretti had committed terrible acts. But she also declared powerful politicians and billionaires had spent decades blaming men like Luca publicly while secretly financing the systems destroying innocent families privately. The ballroom froze completely. Sofia continued anyway. She defended neither violence nor organized crime. But she refused to let corrupt elites portray themselves as victims while hiding behind media manipulation and political influence. Most shocking of all, she publicly admitted Luca Moretti had protected innocent people the government abandoned repeatedly. The silence afterward felt suffocating. Cameras captured everything live. Every criminal leader inside Chicago understood the consequences immediately. Sofia Bennett had publicly humanized Luca Moretti, and Luca completely lost control emotionally. For years, he had ruled through fear, discipline, and emotional detachment. Vulnerability made powerful men weak. Compassion made them predictable. Humanity made them destroyable. Yet Sofia had just reminded the world he still possessed all three. The emotional impact shattered him visibly. Sofia noticed it instantly in his expression. The cold emotional mask he wore around everyone else collapsed for several dangerous seconds while he stared at her across the ballroom like a man hearing salvation and destruction simultaneously. No one inside the room missed it. Fear spread rapidly afterward. Rival mafia leaders exchanged nervous glances. Politicians quietly stepped away from Luca's inner circle. Security teams repositioned themselves throughout the ballroom, instinctively sensing danger approaching. Because if Luca Moretti truly cared about someone, there was no limit to what he might destroy to protect them. Vanessa recognized the shift immediately and escalated the psychological warfare further. She quietly informed rival organizations that Luca planned to expose political allies publicly in order to keep Sofia alive. Whether true or not no longer mattered. The rumor alone destabilized every alliance protecting Chicago's corruption networks. Paranoia spread across the ballroom like disease. Meanwhile, Sofia stood emotionally shaken after the interview ended. She never intended to defend Luca personally. But after everything she witnessed inside his empire, the corruption, betrayals, political manipulation, and grief consuming him, she could no longer accept the simplistic monster the media described publicly. Luca terrified her, but the system hunting him terrified her more. That emotional conflict deepened dangerously throughout the evening. Later during the gala, Sofia noticed Luca standing alone near massive ballroom windows overlooking the city skyline. The distance between them emotionally felt smaller than ever before. For the first time since meeting him, she approached willingly. Neither spoke immediately. Chicago glowed beneath them through the towering glass, while thunderclouds gathered slowly above the skyline. The ballroom noise faded into distant background sound. Sophia finally realized something then. Luca looked exhausted, not physically, spiritually, like a man carrying violence and grief. For so many years, he no longer remembered how peace felt. And somehow her defense during that interview had emotionally broken through walls he spent his entire life building. That realization frightened her deeply because she felt the attachment growing inside herself too. The dangerous emotional intimacy between them no longer hid beneath fear alone. It had become trust. And trust inside Luca Moretti's empire was fatal. Elsewhere inside the hotel, betrayal accelerated quietly. Security systems monitoring ballroom entrances began malfunctioning mysteriously. Several surveillance feeds disconnected entirely before reconnecting seconds later. Armed guards assigned to Luca's protection detail disappeared from their positions without explanation. Someone inside the organization had compromised the hotel deliberately. Luca realized it moments before disaster struck. Sophia noticed a change in him instantly. His body stiffened. His eyes scanned exits automatically. Every survival instinct inside him activated at once. Then the ballroom lights flickered. Panic spread immediately through the crowd, while music stopped abruptly. Politicians shouted for security. Guests rushed toward exits instinctively. But the exits would not open. Heavy steel doors sealed automatically throughout the ballroom with violent mechanical force. Electronic locks engaged simultaneously across every floor of the hotel tower. Screams erupted across the room. Within seconds, armed men appeared behind the ballroom windows, across balconies, and inside upper-level observation decks, surrounding the gathering completely. Rifles pointed directly into the terrified crowd. Chaos exploded instantly. Security guards drew weapons while civilians collapsed behind tables and marble pillars. Wealthy elites who once controlled cities suddenly looked terrified and powerless beneath gunfire waiting to erupt. Sophia's pulse nearly stopped. Then she felt Luca pull her behind him protectively. For the first time since entering his empire, she saw genuine fear inside his eyes. Not fear of dying, fear of failing to save her. Around them, the entire criminal and political structure holding Chicago together began collapsing in real time. Rival organizations had coordinated the attack perfectly. Federal investigations, political chaos, assassination attempts, and media scandals had all been preparation for this single moment, a full-scale betrayal. And everyone trapped inside the ballroom suddenly realized they were standing at the center of a war. Then the hotel speakers crackled alive above the terrified crowd. A familiar voice echoed through the ballroom calmly. Damien Cross. And the ballroom doors suddenly locked as armed men surrounded the entire hotel tower. The moment Damien Cross's voice echoed to the locked ballroom, panic turned into war. Screams erupted across the hotel tower, while armed men stormed multiple floors simultaneously. Gunfire exploded to the ballroom windows as terrified politicians and wealthy elites collapsed behind overturned tables, searching desperately for cover. The luxury charity gala transformed into a massacre within seconds. Sophia Bennett froze briefly as chaos swallowed the room around her. Crystal chandeliers shattered overhead, while bullets tore through marble columns and expensive decorations. Blood spread across polished ballroom floors where moments earlier billionaires had laughed beneath camera lights. Luca Moretti reacted instantly. His arm wrapped tightly around Sophia before dragging her behind a collapsed security barricade near the ballroom stage. Armed guards loyal to him exchanged gunfire with attackers flooding through emergency entrances, while rival mafia soldiers emerged from inside the crowd itself. The betrayal had been planned perfectly. Sophia realized many of the armed men attacking the ballroom had entered the gala disguised as hotel staff, private security, or political aides hours earlier. They had waited patiently for the right moment to destroy everyone trapped inside. And Damien Cross had orchestrated all of it. Hotel speakers continued broadcasting his calm voice above the violence. He spoke about justice, corruption, and criminal empires collapsing beneath federal investigation. But Sophia heard something colder underneath his words. Control. Damien did not want peace. He wanted ownership over the chaos replacing the empire. Gunfire intensified across the ballroom, while smoke spread rapidly through upper balconies. Rival mafia leaders attempted escaping through private exits, only to discover entire hallways already blocked by armed mercenaries. Nobody inside the tower remained safe anymore. Sophia watched one powerful senator die only feet away after trying to negotiate protection from both sides simultaneously. Another wealthy investor collapsed beside the ballroom staircase, while security guards abandoned him completely to save themselves. The empire protecting Chicago's elite was cannibalizing itself publicly. Luca kept Sophia moving constantly through the destruction. His brutal side fully emerged during the massacre. The disciplined, emotional restraint she once associated with him disappeared entirely beneath survival instinct and rage. Every movement became violent efficiency, every decision ruthless. Sophia witnessed him execute traitors inside his own organization without hesitation after discovering several guards had secretly unlocked service entrances for rival attackers. The sight horrified her, but what terrified her more was understanding why he had changed. Luca was no longer fighting to preserve power. He was fighting to keep her alive. That realization emotionally shattered something inside her. They escaped the ballroom through underground service corridors beneath the hotel, while explosions shook upper floors repeatedly. Emergency lights flickered through smoke-filled hallways as panicked hotel staff members ran blindly searching for exits. Many never found them. Sophia saw innocent workers caught between rival gunfire, while wealthy criminals used them as human shields during escape attempts. Blood covered luxury carpets and marble staircases throughout the tower. By midnight, the Blackwood Imperial Hotel resembled a collapsing war zone. Meanwhile, Vanessa DeMarco finally revealed her betrayal openly. Sophia discovered the truth after overhearing one of Luca's surviving captains speaking frantically through a damaged communication line. Vanessa had secretly coordinated with rival mafia organizations for months, while feeding confidential security information directly to Damian Cross. She never cared about destroying corruption. She wanted control over what survived afterward. The realization enraged Luca beyond anything Sophia had witnessed before. Vanessa had once belonged to his inner circle, trusted, protected, respected, and she had sold the empire piece by piece while pretending loyalty. Sophia saw genuine emotional devastation hidden beneath Luca's fury then, not because Vanessa betrayed his business, because betrayal had become the only language power seemed to understand inside his world. Hours passed beneath nonstop violence. Federal raids expanded rapidly across Chicago, while news networks interrupted normal broadcasting to cover coordinated operations targeting organized crime, corrupt politicians, and multiple business organizations simultaneously. The city was collapsing publicly. Hidden financial records leaked online, exposing decades of trafficking operations, political blackmail, judicial corruption, and money laundering tied to billionaire families and federal officials alike. Politicians once considered untouchable vanished from public view overnight, and somehow Luca Moretti appeared connected to all of it. Sophia slowly realized the horrifying truth during their escape through lower hotel corridors. Luca had planned for the Empire's destruction long before the attack began. Every leaked document, every financial exposure, every compromised politician. He had been preparing to burn the entire system down. The revelation stunned her emotionally. For weeks, she believed Luca fought desperately to preserve his criminal empire against federal attacks and rival betrayals. But she finally understood reality. Luca was never trying to save the empire. He was trying to destroy the system that destroyed both their families. That truth changed everything between them. Sophia remembered her father's disappearance, the corruption buried beneath political dynasties, the trafficking victims ignored by wealthy elites, Luca's murdered brother, his destroyed family, years of violence fueled by grief and revenge. Neither of them had been fighting monsters. They had been trapped inside a machine designed to consume innocent people while protecting the powerful. And Luca finally wanted the machine dead. The emotional weight of that realization deepened Sophia's connection to him dangerously. Not because she excused his brutality, because she understood his pain now. Deep beneath the hotel tower, surviving members of Luca's organization regrouped temporarily inside a fortified underground security floor connected to private tunnels beneath Chicago. Wounded guards filled narrow corridors, while emergency generators powered flickering surveillance screens monitoring the chaos above. Fear consumed everyone. Several captains demanded immediate escape routes out of the city. Others blamed Sophia directly for destabilizing the empire emotionally. Paranoia spread rapidly as accusations of betrayal erupted between surviving loyalists. Then another explosion shook the underground structure violently. Dust collapsed from concrete ceilings while lights flickered dangerously overhead. The hotel tower was beginning to fail structurally. Sophia watched Luca move through the underground command center like a man carrying death itself behind his eyes. Blood stained his suit. Bruises darkened his face. Yet despite exhaustion and destruction surrounding him, he remained terrifyingly focused. Every decision centered on protecting her. That emotional vulnerability weakened him publicly. Sophia noticed surviving soldiers exchanging nervous glances whenever Luca prioritized her safety over strategic escape routes. The underworld depended on emotional detachment. Men like Luca survived because they valued power above people. But now he valued Sophia above the empire, and everyone saw it. The emotional intimacy growing silently between them intensified during those final hours underground. No dramatic confessions existed between them. No romantic declarations. Only trust built through survival. At one point, Sophia helped treat a deep gunshot wound across Luca's shoulder, while explosions thundered through distant corridors above them. Neither spoke much during the moment, but the silence between them no longer felt fearful. It felt personal. Dangerously personal. Outside the underground bunker, Damian Cross continued manipulating every side simultaneously. Federal tactical units surrounded Chicago properties connected to the Moretti organization, while rival criminal groups hunted surviving loyalists escaping the hotel massacre. News networks portrayed Damian as a heroic architect dismantling organized crime nationwide. But Sophia understood the reality now. Damian did not care about justice. He intended replacing the empire with something even worse. That truth became undeniable after Sophia discovered hidden files inside Luca's underground archive, revealing federal cooperation agreements secretly signed by Damian years earlier. Powerful politicians and wealthy investors had protected trafficking networks intentionally as long as criminal violence remained controlled beneath public visibility. Sophia's father had discovered the conspiracy before his death, and someone inside the system ordered his murder afterward. The realization emotionally destroyed her. Everything her father tried exposing had been true. Every corrupt institution failed intentionally. Luca found her moments later sitting alone beside underground archive shelves while tears silently ran down her face. For once his expression softened completely. No manipulation remained between them anymore. Only exhaustion, grief, and understanding. Sophia finally realizing why Luca lost control emotionally after hearing her defend him publicly. Because after years of violence and betrayal, she was the first person who still believed some humanity existed inside him, and that belief terrified him more than death. Suddenly alarms erupted throughout the underground structure. Security systems failed completely. Someone had compromised the final escape routes. Panic spread instantly through surviving guards, while emergency lights turned deep red across the bunker corridors. Smoke began flooding underground ventilation systems rapidly. The hotel above them was collapsing. Luca reacted immediately. He ordered surviving loyalists towards secondary tunnels beneath the riverfront district, while preparing Sophia for evacuation through an armored service elevator connected to lower maintenance exits. But before they could leave, Vanessa DeMarco appeared. Armed mercenaries surrounded the corridor behind her, while flames reflected across damaged concrete walls. Her expression remained coldly satisfied watching the empire collapse around them. She blamed Luca for everything, for choosing emotion over power, for destroying alliances protecting wealthy families, for weakening the criminal structure keeping political systems profitable. Most of all, she blamed Sophia, because Sophia reminded Luca he still possessed a soul worth saving. The confrontation erupted violently seconds later. Gunfire exploded through the underground corridor, while mercenaries attacked from multiple directions. Several of Luca's remaining guards died instantly protecting the escape route. Smoke consumed the bunker rapidly as structural damage worsened around them. Then the ceiling collapsed. A massive explosion tore through the underground structure, throwing Sophia violently across the corridor, while fire consumed everything behind her. Her hearing vanished temporarily, beneath ringing silence and collapsing concrete. When her vision cleared, she saw Luca dragging her toward the emergency tunnel, while flames swallowed the bunker behind them. The destruction intensified rapidly. Another explosion erupted above the tunnel entrance. Luca shoved Sophia through the emergency exit toward surviving guards, waiting near underground service vehicles. Then he stopped moving. Sophia looked back in horror. Part of the collapsing structure had trapped Luca behind burning debris, while fire spread uncontrollably throughout the tunnel system. Their eyes locked one final time through smoke and collapsing concrete. And seconds later, Luca Moretti disappeared inside the burning hotel after saving Sophia from the explosion. Even after Luca Moretti vanished in the explosion, powerful men across America still whispered his name with fear. 3 months after the destruction of the Blackthorn Hotel, Chicago no longer looked like the city Sophia Bennett once recognized. Federal raids continued across downtown financial districts, while national media networks exposed corruption tied to judges, senators, police commissioners, and billionaire investors connected to Luca Moretti's empire. News helicopters circled the skyline almost every night. Protesters filled courthouse steps demanding arrests. Politicians who once smiled beside cameras quietly disappeared from public life overnight. But despite the collapse of the Moretti empire, fear never truly disappeared. It simply changed shape. Sophia attempted rebuilding her life far away from the violence. She moved into a modest apartment near the northern edge of the city with her younger brother Ethan, hoping distance from the underworld would finally allow them peace. She returned to legal aid work quietly, handling low-income offense cases while avoiding cameras and public attention. Most people inside Chicago still recognize her face from the televised hearings connected to Luca Moretti, but nobody dared confront her directly. Rumors surrounding her connection to the dead Mafia king remained too dangerous. Emotionally, however, she was barely surviving. The nightmares never stopped. Every night she woke remembering flames swallowing hotel hallways, while gunfire echoed through collapsing floors. She remembered innocent workers dying beside wealthy criminals. She remembered Luca dragging her through smoke while bleeding from multiple gunshot wounds. Most of all, she remembered the final moment before the explosion separated them forever. The city believed Luca Moretti died inside that fire. Sophia wanted desperately to believe it too, but some part of her never fully accepted it. The collapse of the Moretti empire created a violent power vacuum throughout the criminal underworld. Rival mafia organizations began fighting openly for territory once controlled by Luca. Assassinations increased across Chicago, New York, and Las Vegas. Federal task forces claimed victory publicly, but privately many investigators feared the destruction of one empire had simply created chaos impossible to contain. Meanwhile, Damian Cross became one of the most powerful men in America. Publicly, Damian positioned himself as a federal hero responsible for dismantling organized crime corruption nationwide. News stations praised him constantly. Politicians called him the future of national law enforcement reform. Behind closed doors, however, Sophia slowly realized Damian had used the destruction of the Moretti empire to strengthen his own influence instead of eliminating corruption entirely. The same wealthy families still controlled political systems. The same billionaires still manipulated judges. The same trafficking networks quietly continued operating beneath new leadership. Only the faces changed. Sophia discovered this truth after mysterious packages began appearing outside her apartment door late at night. The first envelope contained financial ledgers connected to senators previously believed innocent during the federal investigations. The second included photographs showing Damian Cross meeting secretly with surviving members of rival criminal organizations. The third package frightened her most of all. Inside rested a silver pocket watch she immediately recognized. It belonged to Luca. Sophia sat frozen at her kitchen table staring at the watch for nearly an hour, while rain struck the apartment windows outside. Her hands trembled uncontrollably. The pocket watch had disappeared the night of the hotel explosion. Federal investigators never recovered it from the ruins. Someone alive had mailed it to her, or Luca Moretti himself had. Ethan noticed the fear spreading across her face immediately. Though younger and emotionally fragile, he understood Sophia better than anyone. He had witnessed her transformation since entering Luca's world. The exhaustion inside her no longer came only from trauma. It came from grief she refused admitting publicly. Because somewhere beneath the fear, Sophia missed him. That realization haunted her more than anything else. Weeks passed before another coded message arrived. This time the package contained an old newspaper clipping discussing St. Gabriel Cathedral, an abandoned underground church hidden beneath Chicago during the early 20th century. A date had been circled carefully in black ink. Beside it rested a single handwritten sentence. "Truth survives beneath the ruins." Sophia immediately recognized Luca's handwriting. Fear and hope collided violently inside her chest. She spent days debating whether to ignore the message entirely. Every rational instinct warned her cathedral could be a trap created by Damien Cross, or surviving enemies hunting anyone connected to the Moretti Empire. Yet, emotionally she could not stay away. Too many unanswered questions remained, especially concerning her father. Since the hotel explosion, Sophia uncovered hidden records proving her father had secretly worked with Luca's murdered younger brother years earlier, while attempting to expose trafficking operations connected to elite political dynasties. Her father had not been corrupt. He had been trying to destroy the same system Luca eventually declared war against, and that system murdered him for it. Sophia realized Luca protected her because he carried guilt connected to her father's death for years. Though not directly responsible, Luca blamed himself for failing to stop the corruption before innocent families were destroyed. That guilt changed him. For the first time, Sophia understood the emotional war Luca had been fighting beneath the violence. He was not simply a ruthless mafia king protecting power. He was a broken man attempting to burn down the empire that consumed his family before it consumed hers too. The realization made forgetting him impossible. On the night marked inside the newspaper clipping, Sophia left the apartment alone despite overwhelming fear. Snow drifted across Chicago streets, while freezing wind moved through empty intersections. She followed the address toward the oldest section beneath downtown, where abandoned train tunnels connected to forgotten church foundations beneath the city. The entrance to St. Gabriel Cathedral remained hidden behind rusted steel gates underground. Sophia descended carefully into darkness, carrying only a flashlight and a silver pocket watch. Water dripped slowly from cracked stone ceilings, while old religious statues stood broken along narrow corridors. The deeper she walked, the more silence surrounded her. It felt less like entering a church and more like entering a grave. Yet strangely, she felt calm. Because for the first time in months, the fear inside her no longer came from Luca Moretti. It came from the possibility he might truly be alive. The underground cathedral finally emerged beyond the tunnels, like a forgotten kingdom buried beneath Chicago. Massive stone arches stretched toward darkness overhead, while shattered stained glass windows reflected pale moonlight through cracks above ground. Dust covered ancient wooden pews. Candles burned quietly near the altar despite the emptiness. Someone had prepared the cathedral recently. Sophia's breathing slowed as she stepped carefully across the cold stone floor. Then she saw him. Luca Moretti stood inside the shadows near the far end of the cathedral beneath fractured religious statues. His black coat blended into the darkness, while scars from the explosion remained visible across one side of his face. He looked thinner, more exhausted, but unmistakably alive. For several seconds, Sophia could not move. Months of grief, anger, fear, and confusion crashed together violently inside her chest. Every nightmare she survived suddenly became real again. Luca watched her silently without approaching, almost as though he expected her to disappear if he moved too quickly. The powerful mafia king who once controlled entire cities now looked emotionally broken beneath the cathedral's shadows. And somehow that frightened Sophia more than his violence ever had. She realized immediately he had been hiding underground for months, while secretly leaking evidence against surviving corruption networks across America. The destruction of the Moretti Empire had only been the beginning. Luca continued exposing politicians, judges, billionaires, and federal agents connected to trafficking systems still operating nationwide, including Damien Cross. Luca explained quietly that Damien manipulated both criminal organizations and federal agencies long before the hotel attack. The entire war against organized crime had been engineered carefully to eliminate competition, while allowing Damien to consolidate political influence for himself. The corruption never disappeared. It simply evolved. Sophia felt physically sick hearing the truth confirmed aloud. All the death, all the destruction, entire families erased simply to protect wealth and power hidden beneath government systems ordinary people could never see. For years, Luca tried destroying the system from inside, and it destroyed him instead. Yet despite everything, Sophia noticed one terrifying truth immediately. Luca no longer cared whether he survived. The obsession that once drove him toward violence had transformed into something colder, more dangerous. He intended finishing the war against the corruption networks, even if it killed him publicly. Sophia realized the cathedral was not a hiding place. It was a final battlefield. The emotional weight of that realization crushed her. For months she told herself she feared Luca Moretti. Yet standing inside the cathedral, she understood the deeper truth she had spent weeks denying. She feared losing him. That realization changed everything between them. Luca finally stepped forward beneath the dim candlelight, and for the first time since meeting him, Sophia saw genuine emotional exhaustion inside his eyes instead of ruthless control. The powerful mafia king looked like a man carrying years of grief. He no longer had strength to survive alone. Sophia understood then why he vanished after the explosion. Not to escape, to protect her from the final war still coming. But before either of them could speak further, distant footsteps echoed suddenly through the underground tunnels surrounding the cathedral. Then came the sound of weapons being loaded. Sophia turned toward the darkness just as armed shadows began appearing beyond the cathedral entrance, while red laser sights moved slowly across the stone walls. And standing among them was Damien Cross himself. The freezing wind sweeping through the underground cathedral carried smoke, ash, and the final remains of an empire that had ruled Chicago through fear for decades. Deep beneath the city's streets, hidden under abandoned tunnels and forgotten subway foundations, the cathedral stood like the graveyard of powerful men who believed corruption could live forever. Ancient stone walls trembled under distant explosions, while emergency sirens echoed faintly from the streets above. The entire underground structure felt alive with tension, rage, betrayal, and the weight of generations destroyed by greed. Sophia Bennett stood near the center aisle of the cathedral, her hands trembling slightly as federal lights flashed through the broken stained glass windows high above. The air smelled of burning wood, gunpowder, and wet concrete. Around her, armed men from rival mafia families moved carefully through shadows, while wounded guards collapsed against pillars stained by smoke and blood. The final war for the Moretti Empire had reached its conclusion beneath the same cathedral where powerful politicians and criminal leaders had secretly met for years to control Chicago from darkness. Luca Moretti stood near the altar, wearing blood-stained black clothing, his expression colder than anyone Sophia had ever seen before. Weeks earlier, he had vanished inside the burning hotel, while the entire country believed he died during the collapse. Yet standing there beneath flickering firelight, he looked less like a survivor and more like a man already carrying the weight of his own funeral. Sophia finally understood why Luca disappeared after the hotel attack. He had never intended to rebuild the empire. He had returned only to destroy every hidden system connected to corruption that ruined both their families. The underground vault beneath the cathedral contained decades of financial records, trafficking evidence, political bribes, judicial blackmail files, and hidden identities tied to senators, judges, billionaires, and federal agencies. Those documents represented the true foundation of the Moretti Empire. Criminal organizations were never the real power. The real power had always belonged to respected public figures hiding behind laws while using mafia families as disposable weapons. Sophia stared at the massive wall of filing cabinets and encrypted drives hidden behind the altar. Her father's name appeared repeatedly across the recovered documents. At first she believed he worked willingly beside the empire, but after uncovering the remaining files left behind by Luca's dead brother, the horrifying truth finally became clear. Her father had secretly worked with Luca's younger brother, Matteo Moretti, years earlier to expose a trafficking system controlling Chicago's political elite. Matteo discovered children, immigrants, vulnerable women, and missing witnesses were being traded through networks protected by powerful government officials. Entire families disappeared simply because wealthy men wanted silence preserved. Sophia's father attempted helping Matteo expose the system publicly. Both men were betrayed before they succeeded. Matteo was murdered and publicly blamed for crimes committed by corrupt politicians. Sophia's father disappeared shortly afterward, leaving behind only rumors and fear. The people responsible for their deaths later used federal investigations and manipulated media coverage to strengthen their own power, while convincing the public organized crime alone caused violence, destroying the city. Sophia felt physically sick realizing how many innocent lives were sacrificed simply to protect billionaire dynasties and political reputations. Across the cathedral, Damien Cross slowly emerged from the shadows, surrounded by armed federal agents and private mercenaries. His expensive coat was covered in ash, while blood stained one sleeve from injuries suffered during earlier fighting. Yet his expression remained calm, cold, calculated. For years, Damien presented himself publicly as a federal investigator fighting organized crime. In reality, he had manipulated both law enforcement and criminal organizations simultaneously, ensuring corruption remained profitable regardless of who controlled the streets. Vanessa DeMarco stood beside him with terrified eyes. The confident manipulator who once controlled elite social circles now looked emotionally shattered by the collapse happening around her. She had spent years helping powerful men destroy innocent people simply to maintain status among Chicago's wealthy elite. But now the empire protecting her was collapsing publicly. Sophia noticed fear spreading across everyone inside the cathedral because the balance of power had finally broken. Nobody trusted anyone anymore. Rival families turned against each other. Federal agencies leaked classified evidence publicly. Politicians abandoned longtime allies overnight. The system feeding corruption was consuming itself. Lucas stepped closer toward Sophia while distant gunfire echoed through underground tunnels. For the first time since she met him, Sophia saw exhaustion beneath his controlled exterior. The ruthless mafia boss feared by entire cities no longer looked obsessed with power. He looked like a man carrying decades of grief he could never escape. She finally understood the emotional truth hidden beneath his brutality. Luca never became violent because he enjoyed cruelty. He became violent because the world around him convinced him mercy only created graves. Sophia realized something even more devastating in that moment. Despite everything he had done, despite the blood attached to the Moretti name, Lucas spent years trying to destroy the same corruption system that murdered Matteo and her father. He simply became trapped inside the monster while trying to kill it. Damien suddenly ordered his men toward the vault. Armed mercenaries rushed forward through smoke-filled aisles while rival mafia soldiers opened fire across the cathedral. Bullets shattered ancient stone and stained glass exploded above them as chaos erupted completely. Sophia dropped behind a fallen pew, while Luca moved directly into gunfire, without hesitation. The violence spreading across the cathedral felt apocalyptic. Flames climbed old wooden walls, while collapsing pillars shook the underground foundation beneath them. Federal sirens screamed closer from above ground. The city finally knew the truth. News stations across America began leaking the Moretti files publicly. Hidden corruption tied to judges, senators, police commissioners, billionaires, and federal agencies exploded across every network simultaneously. Entire political careers collapsed within minutes. Emergency resignations spread nationwide, while riots erupted outside government buildings. The corruption system controlling Chicago for decades was finally exposed. But Luca understood something Sophia was only beginning to realize. Powerful systems never die quietly. Vanessa attempted escaping through the underground tunnels, carrying encrypted files connected to remaining politicians still hidden from public exposure. Before she reached the exit, rival gunmen intercepted her near the burning staircase. The manipulator who spent years helping destroy innocent families vanished beneath collapsing debris as explosions consumed the tunnel. Damien survived longer. He cornered Sophia near the altar while flames climbed toward the cathedral ceiling. His expression remained disturbingly calm despite the destruction surrounding them. He admitted the government would simply rebuild another system even if this empire died tonight. Corruption adapted. Powerful men always survived. Cities changed names, but greed remained eternal. Sophia realized Damien truly believed innocent people existed only as tools for maintaining control. Before Damien could reach her, Luca shot him across the cathedral. The impact threw Damien backward against the burning altar steps. Blood spread across ancient stone, while smoke swallowed the remaining federal agents retreating toward emergency exits. Silence briefly settled inside the cathedral, except for collapsing fire and distant sirens above. Lucas slowly lowered the weapon. For the first time since meeting him, Sophia saw genuine peace inside his eyes. Not victory, acceptance. He finally destroyed the people responsible for destroying Matteo, her father, and countless innocent families trapped beneath corruption they never understood. But the cathedral itself was dying around them. Explosions beneath the underground vault triggered structural collapse throughout the tunnels. Massive cracks spread across the walls, while burning debris crashed from the ceiling. Sophia realized Luca planned this from the beginning. He intended to bury the Empire permanently. Federal agents surrounded the cathedral exits above ground, while helicopters circled overhead. News broadcasts already labeled the underground collapse as a final destruction of the Moretti organization. Yet standing inside the burning cathedral beside Luca, Sophia no longer saw the ruthless mafia king feared across America. She saw a broken man who spent years trying to destroy the machine that turned him into a monster. Smoke filled the cathedral rapidly as Lucas stepped closer toward her through falling ash. Sophia remembered the terrified man hidden beneath his violence, the loneliness inside the memorial room dedicated to Matteo, the emotional silence surrounding him whenever anyone showed him kindness, the fear he carried every time she risked herself defending him publicly. Then she finally understood the truth he spent months hiding from her. Sophia was never simply someone he wanted to protect. She represented the life both their families lost years earlier before corruption destroyed everything around them. Luca gently placed Sophia's father's recovered necklace into her hand. The chain felt warm from fire. For the first time, his voice lost the cold control hiding his emotions. He admitted Sophia was the first person in years who made him believe redemption might still exist for men like him. Not power, not violence, not fear. Her. Sophia felt tears forming as the cathedral collapsed around them. Despite the destruction, despite the blood and grief attached to his empire, she realized she no longer feared him. She feared losing him. Another explosion ripped through the underground vault as collapsing beams crashed across the cathedral floor. Luca forced Sophia toward one of the emergency tunnels leading upward, while federal agents stormed the entrances above. The entire underground structure began collapsing into fire and smoke. Sophia looked back one final time and saw Luca standing near the burning altar surrounded by collapsing shadows, almost like the cathedral itself had become his grave. Then the ceiling collapsed between them. Federal agents pulled Sophia from the ruins moments before the underground cathedral disappeared beneath flames and debris. Smoke swallowed the entire structure, while emergency crews flooded the streets above. Chicago watched the Moretti empire burn in real time. The corruption networks tied to politicians, judges, billionaires, and criminal organizations collapsed publicly over the following weeks. Arrests spread nationwide. Federal investigations reopened thousands of missing witness cases. Powerful families once considered untouchable vanished from public life almost overnight. Yet despite everything exposed beneath the cathedral, Sophia understood one terrifying truth remained unchanged. Corruption never truly dies. It only changes faces. Weeks later, federal recovery teams searched the cathedral ruins for Luca Moretti's body. They never found it.